Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Rabbit Hole Reviews. Today we're going to take a look at a pistol that I love to hate, the Polish P-64 in 9x18 Makarov. So there's a bunch of different things I like about this pistol, and then there's a bunch more that I don't like. So things that I like. I like the chambering, 9x18 Makarov. I like the excellent build quality of the P-64. It's all steel construction. Has a chrome lined barrel. Guns that came out of the Radom factory are all nice for the most part. I do have a bias towards Polish firearms. So that being said, I'm going into this review wanting to like the P-64. You would think that a gun that weighs 22 ounces and that is all steel would be enjoyable to shoot, but this one, in my opinion, is not. And I think that has a lot to do with the profile of the pistol grip, the way that you have to hold this gun. It's kind of rides kind of high in the hand, so I think that's part of the reason why this gun is so snappy. So it's a straight blowback design, fixed barrel, like pretty much 90% of the pocket pistols of this era. A very well thought out gun in terms of its aesthetics. I think it's a beautiful looking gun in my view. It has some of those European features that we had talked about before, right? So it has a heel magazine release, as you can see here. So there's no magazine button. It has an internal slide lock. So, of course, the slide will stay open after the last shot's fired. Typical Walther style aesthetic, the slide mounted safety. On paper, I think this gun really had everything going for it. But in reality, I think it just falls short. So the magazine capacity, 6+1, right? That's not particularly great, but you got to remember when this gun was designed in the late 1950s, early 1960s, that really wasn't an issue. And of course, if you look at it, the size of the pistol, you're going to have a penalty in terms of magazine capacity just because of the size of the P-64. Even with the finger rest on the magazine, I'm really barely able to hold on to this pistol. And it's, my hands are relatively large. So other people may have less of an issue. We'll take a look at a few things while I've got the pistol in my hand. So as you do with the heel magazine release, pull it out from the rear. Weapon is clear. So if you look, it has a loaded chamber indicator. So if you look on the back here, right, there's a little protrusion, and if there's a round in the chamber, which of course there is not one now, this will stick out, so it gives you an idea that the pistol's loaded. So I guess that's nice. What's not so nice are these sights, which are, my research says that these are calibrated to fire or zeroed in at 50 meters. I find that hard to believe. The sights on these things are, I think they're just for show. I mean, yeah, they get the job done, but the pickup on this is not intuitive at all. But I mean, look at the size of these things, right? But they say that they're dialed in for 50 meters. I don't imagine you firing this pistol at something 50 meters away. I mean, can it be done? Yes, I'm sure it can, but would you be engaging targets at that distance? I would certainly hope not. So this is a later production gun. I wouldn't say later. This is a 1974 produced pistol. So in 1973, they introduced a couple of changes. And you'll notice the changes externally by the change in the hammer. The earlier versions had a ring-style hammer, like an early Browning high power, and this later one has a triangular squared-off style hammer that sticks out further, and that was done so you could cock the pistol easier with one hand. You could actually get in there and get a grip on the hammer. What's interesting about it is they changed some stuff internally, so this gun, the earlier production P-64 magazines are not compatible with the later production like this one here. So if you source extra P-64 magazines, you have to make sure that the magazines are not for the earlier gun versus the later pistol, which to me, that is terrible. I mean, as far as collecting a gun like this, yes, I have this just as a collector's item. This is a range toy. But for any serious duty use, I would not use this gun. I mean, the magazine issue that's annoying to have two different magazines for a relatively obscure gun that are two different types. You would not be able to tell that unless you had some pretty in-depth knowledge of this handgun. I think a normal person buying these online or in person, unless you had your empty magazine with you to compare the feed lips, I think you would be in for a shock when if you bought the wrong magazines. So that to me is that's a real strike against this gun, to have to find two different types of magazines. I'm sure, in the Polish military and security forces that wasn't an issue, but as a collector and someone who's buying these on the surplus market, that is a big issue in my view. So let's get some technical specs out of the way. This is, of course, a double single action hammer fired semi-automatic pistol, straight blowback, fixed barrel design, caliber is 9x18 Makarov, magazine capacity is 6+1, has a barrel length of 3.3 inches, overall length of 6.3 inches, overall height of 4.6 inches, is 1 inch wide at the slide. Sights are post front, notch rear. Trigger pull, which is a kind of an infamous thing about this gun. The trigger pull is listed at 19 pounds double action and 4 pounds single action. We're going to test that in a little bit. The safety, of course, is a slide mounted decock style safety. And the weight comes in at 22 ounces. So, wow. I mean, I love FB Radom. I like things that came out of that factory. This gun was actually conceived and put in general issue to replace their copy of the Soviet TT-33, which in my view, this was a step backwards to have this versus a Russian or a Polish copy of a Tokarev. We did a review on a Yugoslav M57 earlier on the channel. Now that's a slightly modified version, but either one of those guns I think is superior to this in pretty much every way. Magazine capacity, just ease of shooting, ballistics, everything about the TT-33 I think is better than this. What this offers is being more concealable. It's a very thin handgun. It's very flat. But aside from that, it's just not a pleasant gun to shoot. Let's put it on the scale so I don't keep bad-mouthing it. I bought this gun, like I said, as a collector. This is never going to be anything more than a range toy for me. A lot of people criticize shooting it. I mean, it is kind of an experience. I'll have other people shoot guns like this. Compared to like a Makarov, like a regular Bulgarian, Russian, or East German Makarov, this gun is nowhere near as fun to shoot. It's just not as pointable. The recoil is just unnecessarily harsh, given the design of the gun and the caliber. Let's go ahead and see if my scale is going to cooperate. Well, I'm going to have to switch scales, I think. Luckily, I have a backup scale that I can use. All kinds of errors happen in these single take videos. I don't go back and edit. So we'll just adjust on the fly. And let's see what we have. All right. So 19.6 ounces. Now that's without a magazine in there. So the 22 ounce published weight, I'm assuming, is with an empty magazine. What I do have is a loaded magazine. So we're going to go ahead and insert that now. So you've got 6 rounds. Of course, you could have 6+1 if you chose. But we're going to go ahead and do 6 rounds for the weight. So that comes in at 23.5 ounces with a 6-round magazine. And if you did carry with 6+1, it would be, I'm going to say add roughly 0.4 ounces to this. Let's see what the weight comes in at. All right, well, let's see what it says. I'm going to say roughly 24 ounces if I don't get a number on this, because it was 23.5 with 6 rounds, so roughly a half an ounce for an extra round. Let's see what the prediction is. 23.45. All right, so 23.8, so almost 24 ounces if you have 6+1. So we took a long time to get to that weight, but that's what happens on these single take videos. We'll go ahead and make the weapon clear. So would I carry this gun? No, no way. Simply because just the ergonomics of it are not particularly good. It is small, but of course, the ergonomics, you would think, okay, well, just because it's small, it's not going to be, that's the only thing I have to worry about, right? Well, the safety is not particularly intuitive to put from safe back to fire. That's kind of a struggle. The sights are abysmal, in my view. I mean, for a pistol of this type, is that really a big issue? No, you're probably going to be shooting at close range. I just think that given the stuff that's out on the market now, for roughly the same money, because these are not particularly inexpensive anymore. They were $200 guns when they were imported, but clean examples like this one, they're going to go for a little bit more money now. I just think that money would be better spent putting into something more modern. That's just my opinion. So, of course, likewise, have this as a house, like a bedside gun? Yeah, absolutely not. In my view, I wouldn't do that. Of course, everyone has their own take on their own self-defense. Everyone feels what they're comfortable with. So I never present my views as fact in these videos, because we all have our different backgrounds and we all have different philosophies of use on different equipment we have. And some people are effective with equipment that I wouldn't, necessarily want to use. They could be trained up, and there's a lot of things that go into that. But as a collector's gun, I like it. It's very well made. It has a chrome line bore, it's nice. Is it necessary? Not really. This gun's never really going to be even outside, to be honest with you. Fire a few rounds, put it away. I have it because I like pocket pistols, not because I like the P-64. I do appreciate the build quality. I think it's pretty decent for what it is. Back when these were originally imported, I think they were better buys. I think for $200, they're great guns. But let's test the trigger pulls, because I know they're going to be heavy just from shooting this gun. No surprises there, though. So let's see what my gauge says. Yeah, it's interesting how the Polish military thought that this would be an upgrade from a TT-33 Tokarev. I mean, I could be the one that's ill-informed here. I just think that that's a poor choice. I think it's a step backwards. So let's see. Let's test the double action first. Get the heavy trigger pull out of the way. Now, neither the double or single action are particularly good as far as their smoothness and all that. I'm sure you could put like Wolf springs and you could lower the trigger weights. I haven't done so because this is not a serious pistol for me. This is just a collector's item. Let's see if I can get a good grip on this gun. It's going to be a struggle. Hopefully it registers on my gauge. Yikes, 21.2 pounds. And it feels that way. It's definitely a 20-pound trigger pull, double action. All right, 19.8. We'll do one more. I guess it's going to be over 20 pounds. All right, 19.4. So yeah, a 20-pound trigger pull. The published numbers are accurate. Let's see what the single actions are. I'm going to say in the 5-pound range. Obviously, single action is much better to shoot, and that's pretty much where you'd be shooting 90% of the time anyway. 4.6 pounds. If I were to carry this, it would be condition 2, round in the chamber, hammer dropped with a decocker. But like I was saying, I would never carry this gun. If it was the last handgun I owned, I would carry it. Let's put it like that. .2 pounds. We'll do one more. It's going to be between 4.2 and 4.5. That's my guess. All right, well, I was wrong. 4 pounds. So the single action is definitely preferred over double action, which is to be expected. Most single actions are better on handguns than double actions. So this has been my review of the Polish P-64. I have less to talk about with this gun, simply because it's just not a gun that I get a lot of use out of. I think I've taken this to the range twice in the time that I've owned it. I will never sell it because it's a nice, clean example of FB Radom produced gun in the 1970s. I would like to get a Polish Wanad. I had one in the past. That's something I want to review coming up. I'm having trouble finding one of those, at least one that's affordable. That was a replacement to this, or at least a kind of like to serve alongside of it, the Polish Wanad. They imported those relatively small numbers of those back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that's when I had one. And then just throughout the course of life, it somehow left my collection. I'd like to get another one. Those are less common than the P-64. So that pretty much wraps this up. This has been a somewhat on-the-fly abbreviated review of the Polish P-64 in 9x18 Makarov.